Welcome back, everybody, to the Omni stage at Event Tech Live, USA and Canada 2021. And to our next session, we welcome the managing partner at Experience Design, Mr. Kim Meyer. Kim's going to be looking at experience design in a hybrid event future. Kim, thanks for joining us today. I hope you're feeling well.
I'm all good.
Fantastic. I'm going to hand over to you. I'll see you a little bit later on for some questions from our audience.
Great. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, I guess, depending on where you are in the world. And yeah, I'm Kim Meyer. I've sort of, as a way of background, I've been sort of knocking around the events industry for a number of years and worked for some of the world's biggest agencies and with some of the world's largest brands. Today, with a group of colleagues, we created a small consultancy called Experience Design, where we're helping brands and agencies actually understand new ways of embracing change and taking advantage of some of the opportunities that are out there to really create some outstanding experiences. A lot of what I'm going to talk about today, I think you'll hear as a recurring theme throughout a lot of the other speakers. I was listening into this morning's sessions and a lot of what people were saying is happily confirmed some of the things that I'm going to be saying. So it's not going to be as crazy as maybe I thought it was going to be. So there you have it. But before we get started, I want to kind of give you just a quick update on what we're going to talk about today. One, I want to really focus in on this sort of inevitability of technology change. It's a really interesting phenomenon, and it's interesting that it took a pandemic, to kind of wake our industry up to the fact that there are some really superior technologies out there that allow us to build better experiences and really engage audiences in much more meaningful ways. And of course, even if that weren't true, the technology that we have today has really changed attendees. I mean, we all have changed pretty dramatically. And I heard people talking about their younger children earlier and how, they're totally switched on their devices. In my home, no question goes unanswered. I mean, you just can Google it quickly. So, I mean, I think we all live in a different world in terms of technology. And that means that we approach experiences in a different way. And that means that organizers need to understand that change, and begin to figure out ways of designing experiences that optimize who we are and the sort of mixed reality world we live in. We live in a hybrid world. We live in a world where we're partly online and we're partly live. And so that's really, really important. And there are now techniques that are emerging, some of them are 20 years old, that are helping agencies look at ways of re-engineering their approach to designing experiences with putting humans and human behavior and human desires and human outcomes much more at the forefront of how they build events than looking at logistics once they understand their audiences. I like to tell a story to start off. We're starting with the first one. I'd like to tell a story before I get going. This goes back quite a long time ago. I think I was working at the time for a publisher called International Data Group, IDG. I was in Boston, and I remember traveling to New York to attend a conference with the chairman of IDG. It was a guy by the name of Pat McGovern, and we went to an event called Siebold Seminars, which was one of the first sort of big conferences that focused on online publishing. And Pat was walking around before his speech, and lots of people were coming up to him, and I was sort of standing off to his right. And people were saying, Pat, don't worry, this online publishing stuff, it's never going to take off, so don't worry, the publishing industry is as strong as ever, and it's going to continue to be strong. I mean, who wants to read online? People are going to want to, pick up a magazine, pick up a newspaper. They're going to want to read the way that they always have. And it was an interesting conversation. Well, it's funny because Pat got on stage. He said, I really want to thank all my colleagues for trying to reassure me that publishing on paper and print publishing was still a healthy industry. But it said it really made me nervous, because I can remember when TV first emerged, everybody in radio was saying, don't worry, who wants to watch someone reading the news on television? And that's kind of the same kind of scenario now that we see with some of the technologies that are impacting the events industry. This incredible insistence that only face-to-face, only live is the way that you build relationships and the way that you communicate and build community. And we, of course, learning that that's just like in television. We know what happened there, not entirely true. It took a pandemic, in fact, for people to actually start to realize that there were other alternatives. And it's amazing actually how quickly the industry responded to this pandemic and to the situation that we were in, where people couldn't travel and they couldn't attend events. Here's the Financial Times. Conferences are canceled around the world. Some questioning their value. Why do we have events? Now, I'm an old guy, so I was actually around back in 2008. When we had the financial crisis and the meltdown on Wall Street, and we lived through a period where lots and lots of conferences were canceled, and at that time, even there were events that were kind of moving online, at least in some kinds of ways. I can remember even Comdex, a trade show I used to be involved in, went virtual. So we're talking this technology going back quite a few years, but it really this time, because of the global nature of it and because of the health aspect of it, the health scare aspect of it, it really did shut things down pretty substantially, and I think was a big shock to the system. There's no question about that. Amazingly, for many brands and for many event planners and event designers, the pivot to online or virtual events happened really quickly. I mean, we all started using Zoom and using Zoom all day long for many of us, and actually, in some strange kind of way, there were huge benefits to it in that we were able to see our colleagues and our community more frequently. We were able to see them more dynamically and usually in around a more relevant context. I think this kind of started to worry the live events industry, where they were trying to find ways of saying, this is just a fluke and it's temporary, and we're going to go back to the way things were in the good old days. And in fact, they even, started talking about this concept of, Zoom fatigue, like, this just as a way of sort of discrediting the whole concept, But the truth is that, for many people, Zoom is a godsend. And for people who are locked in, being able to see their families, being able to, communicate with their neighbors and with other people, even healthcare workers, was a tremendous advantage, and something that I think, obviously is not going to go away soon. But even still, the events industry, hung in there. Like, yeah, it's coming back. It's coming back. We're going to have those big venues and we're going to fill them. And so just hang tight. We got Zoom fatigue. You can't really make relationships virtually. It has to be live events. I think there was an awful lot of that discussion going on out there in the industry. And in fact, of course, events will come back, and they'll come back for lots of good reasons. And we know that now that we're seeing around the world different places, events coming back in Las Vegas, the cement show, lots of those kinds of things happening. And a lot of people are sitting around watching and waiting and seeing how they go down and how people participate in them. But there's no question that events will come back. And of course, we're all as part of this sort of experience economy. I mean, I think Joe Pine and James Gilmore wrote this book. I mean, and the article on Harvard Business Review almost 2 decades ago. It has become so true to all of us today that, the progression of economic value from commodity through goods to services to staging experiences, the example always like Starbucks, but of course, experience is now becoming a very, very valuable economic incentive. And in fact, now even moving beyond staging experiences, the transforming people's lives and the value of that in terms of the economy, we're on a curve of change, and events are part of that, and experiences are part of that. How those experiences will evolve is what's really important. We know that millennials in particular and young people in general, value experiences and being part of experiences and sharing experiences in some ways more than material objects, or at least that's what the survey says. and this new experience economy, where basically the memories, the interactions, the relationship that brands have with their consumers, becomes an extension of their product. And we're all very familiar with that. I mean, even packaging now being, the experience of packaging being part of the brand. Anyone who's opened an iPhone knows that sort of vacuum thump box, beautiful experience that now is part of the brand, and we rely on that. So, our world has changed in that regard and has become more sophisticated in terms of experiences. Now, you don't believe me that experiences are important and that they're not going away anytime soon, and they're going to be really important to brands and to all of us. You can refer to Boris Johnson here. He's the Prime Minister of the UK, where he says, of course, there's no substitute for face-to-face meetings. And there are lots of situations where communities will want to come together, and there's no question about that. And whether they're British politicians, which are a very interesting bunch, as you hear, wanting to come together to talk politics, whether they're people with red hair who like to hang out together, whether they're in Ireland or whether they're in the Netherlands. Red Hair Day is becoming, been becoming a very popular occurrence, and I think you'll see more of that. And of course, and even if you'd like to, meditate in a crowd, live events and people coming together are not going to necessarily go away. And what's really interesting about all of that is that, there are some limitations, obviously, in terms of technology in the human experience. And there's no question that event organizers are the first to point them out. But there are, in fact, some things that technology just really doesn't accommodate. I'm going to show you a really short video, which, I think really articulates pretty well this sort of discrepancy between technology's all-encompassing taking over the sort of humanity function and humans. So just take a look at this.
Emma. Huh?
There's sound.
Emma. Emma.
Every day it's getting on my nerves.
Emma.
Oh, I'm
Emma. Emma.
This is supposed to be a scenario.
Well, in much of the same way, as paper having a great future, events probably have a great future as well. But I want to just point out how quickly things can change. This was a year after that commercial, and in 2020, and this was in Las Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show. I hope you're hearing these. I can't hear them, but I hope that you are.
This is supposed to be a scenario where, you've run out of toilet paper and you need some help, and technology can be there for you, apparently. So, okay. All right, so I sat down. And here we go. Thank you so much. And what's its name? The robot. Thank God for you. Oh my gosh. Beautiful right here. This is Technology 2020. It says the world's first toilet.
So you can see that, technology is even catching up with some of the basics of humanity. And of course, that's going to continue to accelerate. Here's the smart loo, and it basically not only, figures out what's going on with your internal systems, but it also contacts your physician and keeps a record of you and in a database of essentially of your excrement. So this is technology can do lots of things, and I think we just kind of need to sort of face up to that. We're in an accelerated growth curve in technology that's unlike anything we've seen, at least in our recorded history in the last 20 years. We're inventing technology that's smart enough to invent technology smarter than we are. So I think we are seeing new technologies, and they are improving our lifestyle in lots of ways, and they are improving our lives in lots of ways. If you have a chance, I'm not going to show this to you, but if you have a chance, watch this. It's on YouTube. Jason Silva talking about human augmentation. Incredible things that technology are now doing with humans. While I'm not trying to say everyone should turn into a Borg, I am saying that I think when it comes to experiences, technology is going to play a more and more important role in that. So, of course, with technology enhancements and all of the things that we're seeing, including Lubot and Robot and all these other kinds of things that we're seeing out there, there's no question that we change. I mean, we're only, as you say, human. And technology has had a dramatic impact on all of us and all of the ways that we live our lives. There's no question that today we're much more technology competent. I just read an article recently where I was talking about my mother-in-law, who in her 80s, who is now fully, during this period of pandemic, has gotten fully online. She's shopping online. She, is attending lectures online. She's visiting museums. She's doing all kinds of things. And believe me, it's very new. Only in the last couple of weeks. So the ability of technology to really transform our experience is palatable and powerful. It's certainly changed the way we work. And that's, if anything, has reinforced that during the lockdown has been the work from home revolution and our ability to use technology just to continue working as we did when we were sitting in an office, and in some industries and in some cases even more effectively than when we were in live environments. It certainly has changed how we network, and it's really interesting to me that a lot of live event organizers are saying, the people need to get together, they need to network, they need to meet, and they can only do that face to face. And I think the irony of that, of course, is that people are meeting and communicating on multiple platforms, 24 hours a day, some of them. So I mean, again, the way we network, the way we communicate, our connectivity has changed dramatically in just the last 10 years or so, in terms of the way the internet has supported human interaction in very different ways. And that's also true. It's changed how we shop. And, what's really interesting about this is, when I first started in the trade show business, people used to say to me, events are all about, the experience. And I had a colleague who used to say, no, events are all about sales. Events are a guest in the house of sales. So how we buy and how we evaluate products and all of those things are really important when we start talking about business events and how they're designed, because we shop in very different ways. We learn in very different ways. We entertain, we play and entertain ourselves in very different ways, look at gaming as just this amazing explosion in terms of people online. And of course, we entertain ourselves and we have many more options in how we entertain ourselves than we ever did before. So of course, it's also changed. It's even changed how we drive. I mean, amazingly. I mean, I think I always say this: what's an on-live application? And people can't think of one. And I say, well, sat nav. You're sort of physically driving, but you're being instructed by an application. Those kinds of things are becoming sort of seamless and part of the background, and we don't even think about them. But the truth is that we use them every day. Sorry. And of course, it's changed how we attend events as well. Today we have the technology at our disposal, and it's very personal, and we carry it around in our pocket. And it allows us to have many more options and many more choices. It gives us a lot of control. The truth is, some people were talking about earlier sessions, audiences have control today. They can click out, click in ways that, were less possible, for example, in physical environment where you didn't want to be the only one in the room getting up and leaving the boring PowerPoint presentation. So you sat there suffering and trying to keep yourself awake. Today, because we have so many more options, you can sit in a room with a boring PowerPoint presentation and you can write, you can read, you can communicate with your community, you can do all kinds of things and essentially check out from the content. So we just need to be aware that we live now in this on live world where we're navigating back and forth between live and online experiences without even thinking about it, just as a normal part of how we live our lives. And that makes us really demanding, because we have so many options, and because time is valuable, and because we can, we want what we want, and we're very demanding about what it is that we want from our event. What do we want the experience to deliver for us, and that's become really important too. Um, okay, all right, don't worry. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we're going to want events to be more personalized. We're going to want content that is much more, aligned to the kind of content that we can generate online. We're going to want much more story-based, things that we can follow, better narratives in terms of the experiences that we have. As people, we're going to want to get engaged, be part of the experience, not passive viewers. We're going to want to participate, get down on our hands and knees, take part in the exercises, be part of the experience. We're going to want to share everything today. Selfies have become a tremendous way of life, and we're going to want to interact. We're going to want to find ways of meeting people, interacting with people, making those interactions sustainable and live, but it also may have online. Keep going here on the green. And of course, we're going to want experiences to be sustainable. I love this photo. It's the first time this Indian city could actually see the Himalayas in almost 50 years because of COVID-19 and the clearing of the air. This is going to become increasingly important. And let's just face it, live events, are not up there on the top green list. They pretty wasteful in terms of the environment. And we're going to want to do things that are helpful to the world and have purpose. And there's no question that, we learned a lot through this last period about how technology and how online experiences can really benefit the world. And of course, one of the speakers earlier was talking about this, but this whole idea of providing more immersive, environments where you're taken outside of your context and have an opportunity to surprised, to be motivated in that way. And of course, sensory, being able to smell, hear sounds, and be part of that whole sort of thing, which we do experience partly online and we do experience partly live. Over time, those two things obviously will come together more and more, and we're seeing it in gaming. So of course, events have changed. There's Tony Robbins there with his big, talking to his consumers. There's the TED Talks, which have now gone completely hybrid. So they have a live audience that sit in the room, but then they have a much larger virtual audience who also pay to participate in the event just like they were there. And that platform is not going to change. And the gaming industry has also demonstrated that, you can merge live experiences and virtual experiences in pretty seamless ways when people are compelled by the content. So I think we're going to see more and more in that. And of course, even if you are one of those people that we talked about earlier who like to meditate, we're seeing that this technology allows us to reach out to many, many, many more people than was possible in the live environment and bring them into the experience in new and really compelling ways. So we're going to see much more of that. So organizers can either be victims, they can hang around and wait and see what happens, or they can be more proactive. And as old Bucky Fuller says, we're either victims, we're architects, or we're victims. And I think, being architect of the future is really, really important. So human-centered design is one of the ways that, we are learning how to do that. It's about really understanding people and then building experiences that may involve technology, that may be live, and may involve the two that bring them together. And that's a really simple cycle, and a lot of people are familiar with it. Design thinking empathizing, defining, ideating, prototyping, testing, and implementing. It's been around for a long time. I'm not necessarily wedded to this, but it's a really interesting process whereby really understanding your audience can lead you to very new directions and very new opportunities. In this case, for example, kids were jittering when they were going in for an MRI, and they were trying to figure out how can they get them to lay still. When they interviewed doctors said drug them. When they interviewed teachers said take them on an adventure, and that's what they did. And they had to hold their breath underwater, and because they were in the deep sea. And of course, the rates improved dramatically. It also means defining the problem with more clarity. Are these neighbors not like each other? Does the person on the right like snow on their steps? The snow shovel only able to shovel half of the sidewalk. We really need to start asking deep and probing questions to come up with the right kinds of ideas. And then we need to ideate in a way that really takes us outside the boundaries of kind of what we know. And that is that there are lots of ideas and there are lots of things that we think we know, but we don't know. And then, of course, strapping that event and that experience on your back and giving it a try, beta testing, running it by some of the potential participants, fine-tuning, and then implementing. And often implementing means it may be something that's not something that you, as the planner, thought would have been what the audience wanted, but it turns out that it is. And so it's important to have that kind of mentality. But of course, experience design is really about principles. It's about open-mindedness, really, in lots of ways. So if we just go through a couple of principles here, one is looking at that innovation sweet spot between, what do humans want? What is it that we're trying to achieve with these humans? And so how can we change their behavior and encourage them to behave in different ways? So what is feasible? What can we do? And then how does it make the world better? Creating one kind of human behavior that causes pollution is not necessarily the right kind of human behavior. So we need to look at all of those dimensions when we're looking at building experiences. And then, of course, it's all about individuals and personal experiences. In the end of the day, each attendee matters, and how we're designing around those attendees and what we know about them is critical. And that means having a beginner's mind, that is being willing to accept that, there may be an idea out there that you hadn't thought of, you're willing to learn, you're open-minded. I can tell you, I've worked in this business for a long time, and I had lots of clients that said, I've been doing this for 16 years and I know it works. This is how we're going to do it. And maybe 16 years is long enough. Maybe it's time, to start thinking of different opportunities. And of course, the drunkard's paradox. Officer, I've lost my watch. And he said, did you lose it under this lamppost? No, I lost it across the street. Why are you looking under the lamppost? The light is much better. We have a tendency to look where the light is better, not necessarily where the solution is, and we need to break that pattern. And then, of course, this whole concept of knowing what we know, of all awareness, we know what we know. We think we know what we don't know, but the reality of it is we just don't know what we don't know. There's a huge amount of knowledge which is, for any one of us individually, is beyond us. And that's why it's so important that we not be myopic in our thinking that this is the way it works, and it's the only way it works without considering other options. And of course, that means, surrounding ourselves with diversity and with people with fresh ideas and new ways of thinking about things. So the world's changed, and I don't think, for the purposes of this discussion that you can call it hybrid, you can call it integrated, you can call it however you want, but technology and live experience are bedfellows forevermore. And how we design around that really means that we're going to have to think about it in new ways. And that means embracing change, embracing technology, and making those changes rather than the slow decline into obsolescence. So time for the past to move on, and time for us to move forward. And one of my favorite sayings of all time is, you must be the change you want to see in the world, Mahatma Gandhi. And I just encourage all of you to realize that we are on the precipice of a tremendous opportunity in the events industry to make dramatic change. Thank you.